today we're going to be talking about surface areas and volumes of spheres. So a sphere, remember, is just kind of think like a basketball, right? It's a circle, but it's a three-dimensional circle. So for surface area, our formula is 4 pi r squared, and that's the first thing we're going to find is the surface area of this sphere. So surface area equals 4 pi r squared. So the radius is 7.1, and that's it. So now we're just going to plug that into our calculator. So 4 pi 7.1 squared, and we get 633.5, and our units are millimeters, so it's surface area. Area is squared, so the surface area of this sphere is 633.5 millimeters squared. One thing real quick about spheres, just vocabulary wise, this circle right here that goes around the middle, right? Think of it kind of like the equator if you're thinking of like a globe, okay? So that circle has a specific name, and it's called the Great Circle, okay? And what that Great Circle does is it splits that sphere in half. So the Great Circle is the longest way around, so we have the largest circumference. Again, think like equator, okay? So at the ends of the Great Circle, that would be kind of like here, if you want to imagine that way, but if it went this way, it could be at the top and bottom, are like the poles. Again, think about the globe, North Pole, South Pole, right? So the ends of the Great Circle are called poles. And then what a Great Circle does is it cuts it in half. So if you want, again, think about a globe, it cuts it into our northern and southern hemispheres. So again, I just wanted to talk about the couple parts of a sphere, which are the Great Circle, which again, think equator. The poles are on the edges of the Great Circle, and then the Great Circle divides the sphere in half and creates hemispheres, 2 hemispheres. Okay, so we're going to use that to help us find these next couple problems. So we're asked for the surface area of a sphere, given that the circumference of the Great Circle is 16.2 pi feet. Well, circumference equals pi d, right? So that means that this is pi, right? So that's the d. So therefore, diameter is 16.2 feet. Well, we want sphere's surface area, so we need radius. Well, if diameter is 16.2, then radius is 8.1. Well, now we can find the surface area. So it's 4 pi r 8.1 squared. So we would do 4 pi 8.1 squared. And our surface area would be 824.5. And our units were feet, so feet squared, again, because area, surface area will be squared. Okay, so now we're doing it for a hemisphere. Now a hemisphere is a little tricky. Remember, it's just half. So if we were finding the surface area, we would just do 2 pi r squared, right? That's half. However, remember that surface area wants to cover the entire thing. So think about if you had a bowl of, I don't know, think of your favorite food. I'm gonna say a bowl from Poke Luau, right? Loving some sushi that's in a bowl. So the bowl holds the sushi, right? The deconstructed sushi. So that's great. I need to know how much plastic for the bowl. But if I don't eat it all at one time, I need a lid or else it's gonna spoil. So the surface area, remember, is the idea of covering the entire shape and making the lid. When we talked about a cylinder, we said it was the metal of a soup can, right? It's the whole thing, where the label was the lateral area. So when we do a hemisphere, we need half, 2 pi r squared, but we also need the area of that half on top, right? That great circle. So a hemisphere for surface area is half of the sphere, 2 pi r squared, plus the area of that circle, which is another pi r squared. So really you can just think of it as 3 pi r squared. We don't ever really make that a formula, but it works every time. So for hemisphere, I know it seems weird, it should just be half, but since it's surface area, we need to be able to cover that lid up. Think about it like a poke bowl. So what we know is that one area, right, this pi r squared is 94. I just need 3 of them. So to make life super easy on this problem, all I'm going to do is say 3 times, well, my area, pi r squared, was 94. And I can do that in the calculator. 3 times 94 is 282. So surface area equals 282 millimeters squared. Again, hemisphere is a little bit weird because it's surface area. Now, if it was volume, we're just filling that up, so we don't have to worry about covering it up. So hemisphere's volume, it's just pretty much half of whatever the volume was. But for surface area, remember you got to cover every part of the surface, which that we don't want that poke to sit out open. Okay, so for volume of a sphere, it's just 4/3 pi r cubed. So we're going to start by finding the volume of a sphere with a diameter of 7.4. So we don't need diameter, we need radius. So that's the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that in half. I think it's 3.7. Let's just make sure. Yeah, 3.7. So radius is 3.7 inches. So volume equals 4/3 pi 3.7 cubed. So 4/3 pi 3.7 cubed. And how I got that third is I just pushed the little arrow. And we have 212.2. So 212.2 inches, and it's volume, so it will be cubed. So that's the volume of the sphere. Okay, so now we're gonna do a hemisphere. Remember what I was saying on the last one. Surface area, we had to care about covering it up. For volume, we're just filling it up. So think about if you're holding a bowl and want to know how much ice cream can fit in it. So what we're told differently is that the area of the great circle is 249. So I'm gonna come over here. So that means that 249 equals pi r squared. The problem with this information is we actually need pi r cubed. So I'm going to divide by pi, and then I'm going to take the square root, and that will give me radius. So I'm going to take 249 divided by pi, take the square root, and get 8.9. So my radius is 8.9. Now, instead of being 4/3, if it's half of that, hemisphere is half, it's going to be 2/3. So 2/3 pi 8.9 cubed. So 2/3 pi 8.9 cubed. And we get 1476.5. So volume equals 1476.5. Units were millimeters, and it's volume, so it's cubed. One thing to say here, if you don't round at 8.9 and you just keep using that number, you're going to be a little bit different in your volume. It's only by a few digits, like maybe it's 1477 or something. So that's okay if you want to wait and round. I probably would have waited if I wasn't showing you by hand. So hemisphere for volume is just half, where for surface area it's kind of different. It's that 3. So it's a little bit different because you have to think of like closing it in. So that's volume and surface area of spheres.